Lawns are an iconic element of American homes and suburbs, but who decided they should be, and are they really the best way to use our space? In this video, I will illustrate first how lawns work and why they might not be as good as they seem, and then I'll talk about what alternatives there are to lawns. First of all, where did lawns come from? Well, they began in England during the Regency period, as rich lords and landowners would have vast plots of trimmed grass as a way to illustrate their wealth. These greens were maintained by servants and were trimmed by hand with scythes. American lawns are an imitation of these displays of wealth, popularized in the early 1900s as Americans moved away from cities into the newly built suburbs. These smaller, cut-and-paste plots of green wrapped every new building in the country and quickly became the fascination of dads and land developers nationwide. The lawn care industry grew with the popularity of lawns, and this includes lawnmowers, chemical sprays, weed killers, fertilizers, sprinklers, and more. The industry is massive, with a market size of $100.51 billion in 2021. Now, let's talk about the negative effects of lawns. Lawns aren't all they're cracked up to be. In fact, they have a lot of unintended consequences that you might not be aware of. Growing one kind of grass exclusively, called a monoculture, is the way most people plan their yard. Lawn care is then devoted to maintaining the singular species by eradicating any other plants and trimming the lawn to stay at that perfect length. As grass's flowering bodies are frequently cut, it forces the plant to grow more blades and rhizomes, causing it to stress and use more resources. This constant amputation leads to a negative feedback loop, as grasses struggle to survive and therefore need more fertilizer and water to stay alive. Additionally, most municipalities in the United States use 30 to 60% of their drinkable water on watering grass. Fertilizer produces climate-changing chemicals like nitrous oxide, and fertilizer runoff causes expensive damages worldwide. Furthermore, we use 580 million gallons of gas on lawnmowers every year, while a single lawnmower could produce more pollution than several automobiles combined. Wow, after hearing all those scary stats, you're probably wondering, well, if lawns are so bad, what are the alternatives? Well, actually, there are many options, so the real question is, what do you want to do with that space? A yard can be for a lot of different purposes. It could be a place for sports or a picnic spot on summer days. It could be a purely cosmetic feature or an area for pets. The use of this outdoor space should drive how we design and maintain that land. I'll go over a few alternative options, from most similar to a traditional lawn to some options that totally reimagine the use of yard space. Getting into things, the most simple and easy way to change your lawn to be eco and people-friendly is to use native grasses. Many places have already begun to do this, as native grasses have a much better chance of thriving as they are in the proper climate. The next step towards a sustainable lawns is taking the mower out of the picture, or at least making its use a lot less frequent. Low-growing turf grasses are an option that allow for little to no mowing, instead opting for plants that reach a certain height and then stop growing. For a lawn like this, clover is actually a viable option. A clover yard only needs growing if you don't want it to flower. Many say that it's softer than most turf grasses. This could refer to microclover or white clover. Another grass alternative plant that is ready to be walked on a lot is actually thyme. This option can be a little pricier for initial setup, but this plant is hardy enough to be frequently walked on, and is much more drought tolerant than traditional grasses. Thyme also creates beautiful flowers that can be mowed or kept as desired. Surprisingly, this option doesn't actually call for much time management. Thyme is a type of plant called a creeper. These plants gradually expand to cover empty spaces. There are an assortment of creepers that make excellent turf. These include Hernaria, Creeping Jenny, Ajuga, and more. There are many types of creepers that make viable yards and can be selected based on shade, soil pH, or by what is native. If your yard has a "Don't Step on the Grass" sign, or if you're regrassing a business green, these next cosmetic greens might be a viable option for you. Moss lawns create beautiful natural landscapes that are great for wetter or shadier areas. Moss lawns can take a little longer to initially grow, but pre-grown moss and moss seed slurry is available at many garden supply stores. These lawns can handle some walking on them and feel especially soft on bare feet. Another cosmetic, low-maintenance option is the cultivated wild grasses and flowers yard. These don't have to be messy or lazy looking, as creating and maintaining paths and borders through the grasses can make these look gorgeous. These are especially good for pollinators and can still include a lot of natural biodiversity. For those still seeking a monoculture lawn, there are many beautiful flowering greens like chamomile, daisy, or dead nettle. Dead nettle sounds bad, I know, but it's actually a beautiful flowering yard option. And yes, chamomile like the tea. All of these options will cut down on your maintenance costs in some form or another, be it through less mowing, less watering, or a lack of need for chemical fertilizers and weed killers. Last but not least, let's talk about non-turf yard space alternatives. This means gardens, fruiting trees, or edible landscapes with free-growing edible plants. These obviously come with a lot of different care than a yard, but for shared yard spaces between multiple homes, or small plots of land where the lawns are weirdly shaped, these can be a great option. Of course, this can cover so many different types of gardens and spaces that I won't have time to go over all of them, but a few ideas include native flowering gardens or edible plants available to anyone passing by. These can turn an awkwardly shaped or small yard into something both cosmetic and functional. Additionally, for those interested in wildlife, there are a great many garden plants that attract birds and pollinators. Wow, that was a lot of options. It can feel overwhelming trying to change from traditional care to something more specialized, but it's worth it on several fronts. Foremost in benefits is the cost and economic impact of maintaining a yard. A traditional lawn requires frequent mowing, spraying, and watering, all of which carry a hefty bill. A low maintenance alternative can require little to no mowing, no spraying, and frequent to little watering, depending on the type chosen. For individual landowners, a lawn alternative could be a fun project to beautify your space and benefit your local ecosystem. But for large plots of land, it can be a harder decision. For an apartment or condo complex where lawn care is outsourced, these alternatives can still be viable. Besides the initial setup costs, these options will be much cheaper in the long run and can be a good investment, as they encourage community engagement and can be a selling point or even improve property value. If you are already paying for a lot of maintenance for a lawn that just doesn't want to grow, maybe it's too dry, too wet, too shady, or just unlucky, alternative plants can be selected with your soil in mind, allowing for dead grass spaces to transform from unsightly to attractive and green. In terms of community engagement, a yard space can be easily replaced with community gardens or with a more beautiful and still functional turf that will bring people outside. These can also make property listings appear attractive for potential buyers and in some cases be more safe for dogs and other pets. To wrap things up, I implore you to consider how you might reimagine your yard and to check out some good alternatives. In the description for this video will be every source I used for my research, but I encourage those interested to check out the Lawn Substitutes page on gardeningnowhow.com, where they have simple and educational guides for finding and setting up your new lawn alternative. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on your new lawn soon.